Hello and welcome, I'm Ruby Barlow and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. Israel says its Air Force hits Iran's presidential office and Supreme National Security Council compound with multiple munitions. The military says other key regime sites are also targeted days after joint US-Israeli strikes kill Iran's supreme leader at a separate compound. Iran's Red Crescent says the death toll from ongoing US and Israeli strikes has risen to 787 people since the war began. The figure, released by Iranian state-affiliated sources, comes as search and rescue continue after widespread airstrikes across the country. Russia says it has seen no evidence that Iran is developing nuclear weapons, according to Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The comment contradicts President Donald Trump's justification for war, as Iran denies seeking a bomb and amid nuclear talks remain collapsed after the US exited the 2015 deal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war with Iran will not last for years as Israel strikes Hezbollah targets in Lebanon and Iran hits Gulf states hosting US bases. US President Donald Trump earlier projected a 4 to 5 week conflict, but now signals a broader open-ended campaign as the fighting expands. Hezbollah says it targets 3 military bases with drones and rockets, including Ramat David, Maron and a site in the Golan Heights, in response to Israeli strikes on its strongholds in Lebanon. The Iran-backed group says the attacks follow Israeli airstrikes on dozens of Lebanese cities, including southern suburbs of Beirut. The United States confirms its embassy in Riyadh is hit by drones overnight, closes the facility and urges Americans to shelter in place. Saudi officials say 2 drones caused a small fire and minor damage as witnesses report smoke and explosions in the diplomatic quarter. China denies reports it is providing military support to Iran and says its backing is political and moral, not weapons supplies. Beijing, which relies heavily on oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, condemns US and Israeli actions and calls for a ceasefire and return to nuclear talks. European and UK benchmark natural gas prices jumped more than 30%, hitting their highest levels since January 2023 as Middle East tensions intensify. Prices spike after Qatar Energy halts output following military attacks, with the UK seen as particularly exposed due to low storage and heavy import reliance. And now to our breaking news. An Islamic Revolutionary Guard General, Ebrahim Jabari, has issued a warning stating that if the US and Israel continue their attacks on Iran, the country will respond by targeting all economic centers in the Middle East. Jabari said that if the United States and Israel choose to attack Iran's main centers, Iran will retaliate by striking economic infrastructure throughout the region. He also confirmed that Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz, a critical oil shipping route. Jabari predicted a sharp rise in oil prices, which have already surpassed $80 a barrel, and he said the price could soon reach $200 as Brent crude oil climbed above $85 for the first time since July 2024, further compounding the global economic impact of the escalating conflict. Now, joining us live, we have our guest, Professor Veselin Popovsky, who is a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law Schools in New Delhi. Professor Popovsky, when they refer to the economic centres, is this a thinly veiled threat to cities like Dubai or Doha, which also have a very large population of expatriates living there?
Well, they try already for 3 days to inflict that damage, and it's minimal. There were a couple of victims in Abu Dhabi, I think, and maybe some injuries. These are mostly from falling debris from destroyed attacks. So I wonder what Iran means here, that they should stop doing that, because that doesn't help at all. What Iran should do is very simple. Have a leadership that stops any support for any terrorist organization, such as Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, 1. And 2, stop developing nuclear weapons. And 3, respect human rights of the Iranian people who continuously protest against this regime, which made their life miserable over the last 40 years. Iranians were much better and richer back in the time of the 1980s and 1990s. These ayatollahs made Iranians' life miserable, not only supporting terrorists to hit Israel, but even the life of Iranians is not good. So 3 things Iran should do. Stop support terrorist organizations, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthis. Stop developing nuclear weapons. Respect human rights of the Iranians. Any talk about retaliation.
We seem to have lost Professor Pahlavi there, but he will join us after this story. Israel has carried out an airstrike targeting a headquarters of the Islamist group Jamiat Islamiyah in the southern Lebanese city of Sidon. The group, which is an ally of both Hamas and Hezbollah, has been previously targeted by Israel after claiming responsibility for rocket launches towards Israel. These rocket attacks occurred during the ongoing war between Israel and Hezbollah, which began in October 2023. The air raid hit a coastal location in Sidon, further escalating the conflict in the region. Israel has continued to take action against groups it deems a threat, particularly those linked to Hezbollah and Hamas. Joining us live, we have Daniel Roth, who is a research director of United Against Nuclear Iran, based in New York. Daniel, what other groups could we see get drawn into this conflict? We've already seen statements from the Houthis in Yemen, and there has been attacks against other US allies as well as UK bases in the Mediterranean. How far could this war spread in the region?
Yes, hello. Well, the groups that are aligned with Iran in particular are likely to be drawn in. You mentioned the Houthis. They've already intimated their intentions to get involved, and they could certainly cause some damage, as they did in the last few years, to the Gulf and to the Arabian Sea. I would suggest that Hezbollah are also, they've started already, but they are also obviously an Iranian terrorist proxy, and they could do some damage to northern Israel. Hamas even, although they're rather decapitated at present. Essentially all of the Iran-supported, Iran-aligned proxies around the region, that also includes a lot of these Iraq militias. Kataib Hezbollah is the main one in Iraq. Certainly they could be drawn into this conflict. On the other hand, because of what happened in the wake of October 7th and Israel's response to it, many of those groups are certainly not as dangerous as they were a couple of years ago, having been, more than decapitated, really severely degraded by the IAF in particular. If you're talking about other countries, then we've seen notice that the UK, Germany and France are thinking about, deploying military assets to the region as well. But so far it's kind of limited to the region, the Gulf, Israel and the US.
Daniel, please stay with us as we move to our next story. Farah Pahlavi, the widow of Iran's last Shah, has spoken about the historical significance of the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. In a recent interview, she stated that while Khamenei's passing is an important moment in Iran's history, it will not automatically result in the collapse of the Iranian regime. She emphasized that the demise of a central figure does not always equate to the end of a system, no matter how influential that figure may be. What will truly be decisive, she believes, is the ability of the Iranian people to unite behind a peaceful, orderly and sovereign transition to a state governed by the rule of law. Farah also mentioned that her son, Reza Pahlavi, is working to prepare for such a transition, focusing on building the necessary support among the Iranian population to ensure a peaceful shift in the country's political landscape. Now to Europe, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that Britain is sending helicopters equipped with counter-drone technology to Cyprus following a drone attack on a British base. Additionally, the UK is deploying an air defence destroyer, HMS Dragon, to the region. This move aims to bolster security after the drone strike caused limited damage on their base. Joining us again, we have Daniel Roth, who is a research director from United Against Nuclear Iran in New York. Now, Daniel, what would it mean for the UK to get involved in this conflict? Will they put boots on the ground? How would the reaction in the UK be to a development like that?
No, there's no scenario in which I can see the UK putting boots on the ground, as you say. Certainly the British security establishment has been somewhat paralysed by the experience of Iraq in 2003, and that kind of informs Prime Minister Keir Starmer's initial decision to not allow the US to use its air bases. I believe that the UK has now kind of rescinded that, having been directly targeted by Iran itself. It's difficult to know the mood in the UK. Obviously, I am British, but I live in the US. I suspect there is widespread distaste for Donald Trump, although, I see the Conservative leader backing the US and Israeli decision to strike. I see Nigel Farage. There is certainly a partisan divide, and it's mirrored in the US as well. But certainly no UK boots on the ground. But Britain does have very good intelligence capabilities, very good naval capabilities in the Gulf that they've been, deployed historically. Very good relations with those Gulf countries, with the true shield states, Qatar, the UAE, etc., Bahrain. So it could, and indeed I think it should play a bigger role in this action as we see it now.
Yes, Daniel. Just moving to the previous story about Farah Pahlavi, what are your thoughts on Reza Pahlavi? Is he a useful figurehead for the diaspora movement or a serious candidate for leadership for Iran post-war? He's lived most of his life in the United States, I understand, but I can see the appeal for the Iranian people to want someone who is has grown up in Iran.
Yes, well, as a non-Iranian, I'm hesitant to get involved in, what should be obviously an internal Iranian decision. From my perspective, what I see, he does seem to be very popular, particularly amongst the Iranian diaspora in the West. I think he has been a useful figurehead. He certainly does seem to have encouraged a coalition, a unity of opposition forces to the Ayatollah. As far as I'm concerned, anybody would be better than what is presently the status quo in Iran, which is the IRGC, led by, or formerly led by, a supreme leader. We're not sure who the next supreme leader will be, if indeed there will be a supreme leader. In terms of, extremely difficult to speculate about what's going to happen. President Trump has said this military campaign could last up to 4 to 5 weeks. He said that it's ahead of schedule, but it could go even beyond those 5 weeks. So we're now 3 days into this, this military campaign. I think more than 1,000 major military assets of Iran, of the IRGC, have been struck and degraded. But having been in power for 47 years, it's going to take more than that. So very hesitant to speculate about what could happen. Could see a kind of IRGC light outcome. I ideally wish for regime change. Obviously, the repression that the Iranians have endured is really, I would say, unsustainable. I hope something happens that will actually give the Iranians a chance to have their human rights restored, because the last 47 years have been unbearable for them.
Daniel, please stay with us as we move to our next update. According to witnesses and reports, loud bangs have been heard across the Middle East, including in Dubai, Doha and Abu Dhabi. This comes as US and Israel continue to strike Iran, with Israel also targeting Hezbollah in Lebanon. Meanwhile, Iran continues retaliatory strikes across the Middle East in response to US-Israeli strikes in Tehran that have also resulted in the killing of the country's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei and other Iranian officials. Joining us again, Daniel. Now, we have seen, apparently there's been loud bangs heard in Dubai and several other cities in the Middle East. How would this affect the diaspora there of expatriates? You have, of course, a very large population of expatriate workers from Asia and also expatriates from countries such as the United Kingdom. What is the mood there? Have you heard anything from colleagues in the Middle East, in Dubai, in cities like that?
I've heard from people stuck in Dubai and Abu Dhabi that are trying to, come back to the US. I think there's, American students that are trying to get out of the country. I have family that are trying to transit in the UAE, kind of stuck in Southeast Asia at the moment as well. So yes, things are very much in flux. I would suggest that those airlines are wise to not make any flights right now. Yes, you're right to say that there is a huge expatriate community. I think there's 9 million Indians in the Gulf working there, residing there. There's several hundred thousand Brits as well. I think the US has advised that all Americans try to use commercial flights to leave most of those Gulf countries. I think there were 8 or 9 countries on the list. But as I said, very much in flux. I would hope people kind of stay in place or try to get out, obviously in as safe as possible manner.
Daniel, please stay with us as we move to our next story. Israel's military has announced that its air force targeted industrial sites across Iran involved in the production of weapons, particularly ballistic missiles. The strikes, which took place in Tehran and Isfahan, focused on facilities used by the Iranian regime to produce combat equipment. The Israeli Defense Forces emphasized that these missile production sites pose a direct existential threat to Israel. In addition to missile storage and launches, the IDF also targeted other key infrastructure used by the Iranian military. Israel stated that it would continue operations against Iran's missile production and launch infrastructure as part of its ongoing efforts. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the country is continuing to strike Iran and has vowed to hit Hezbollah with increasing force. Speaking from an Air Force base in central Israel, Netanyahu stated that Israeli pilots are active over Iran and Lebanon. He warned Hezbollah that their attack was a very big mistake and promised a forceful response that will only escalate. He has also vowed to strike Hezbollah in Lebanon with even greater force. This comes as US and Israel continue to strike Iran, with Israel also targeting Hezbollah in Lebanon. Let's listen in to what Netanyahu has said.
אנחנו ממשיכים להכות בעוצמה באיראן. הטייסים שלנו מעל שמי איראן וטהרן וגם מעל שמי לבנון. חיזבאללה עשה טעות גדולה מאוד שהוא תקף אותנו. אנחנו כבר הגבנו בעוצמה ונגיב בעוצמה יתרה ונוספת. ממשלת לבנון צריכה להבין, והעם בלבנון צריך להבין, שחיזבאללה גורר אותם למלחמה לא להם, רק בגלל מותו של אותו מרצח המוני, שאין להם שום קשר אליו. הם צריכים לדאוג לעצמם, וכדאי שיעשו זאת בהקדם. אנחנו נמשיך לעשות מה שדרוש להגנתנו. אנחנו ביום הרביעי של שאגת הארי, אנחנו שואגים ואנחנו פועלים.
Joining us again live, we have Daniel Roth, who is a research director at United Against Nuclear Iran. Now, Daniel, in your work at United Against Nuclear Iran, how essential have you found these facilities? Iran produces a lot of drones and missiles domestically. So where could they look to if these manufacturing facilities are destroyed in this war?
They would have a pretty difficult time because Iran was indigenously producing, in particular, its drones and its missiles. It is pretty famous for having the region's most extensive arsenal of ballistic missiles. It's pretty famous also for having a very well developed drone capacity. In fact, it was so well developed that it is responsible for providing Russia with all its drones that Russia and President Putin uses in its occupation of Ukraine. So they have a very, well-developed, tested arsenal in terms of drones and missiles. It's difficult to know where they would get them from because, as I say, they were supplying to Russia, but also to Hamas, to Hezbollah, which Prime Minister Netanyahu alluded to, the Houthis as well. There is, in over the years, they've had some support in terms of materials from North Korea. It's believed from Pakistan as well to an extent. But really, Iran is kind of self-reliant. So as we're seeing now, Israel, America, its priority is to kind of take out those missile factories or those launchers. I think we've already seen that Iran is sending fewer missiles than it was just a day or so ago as well. So I think Iran's going to have a tough time replacing it.
Daniel Roth, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Now, as we move to our next story, Iraq has cut oil production by nearly 1.5 million barrels per day, with potential further cuts exceeding 3 million barrels per day as the country faces storage limitations and export disruptions due to the ongoing Iran crisis. Production cuts include 700,000 barrels per day from the Rumaila field, 460,000 barrels per day from West Kurna 2, and 325,000 barrels per day from Maisan. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz following Iranian attacks on ships has halted vital energy exports. Iraq's output was about 4 million barrels per day in January, with China and India being the largest recipients of Iraqi crude oil. French President Macron held separate meetings with the leaders of Cyprus, Lebanon, Qatar, the UAE, and the autonomous region of Kurdistan to discuss the escalating situation in the Middle East. These discussions confirmed by the Elysee, but no further information has been provided as of now. According to reports, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has held a phone call with his Iranian counterpart in the Foreign Ministry. Earlier, Lavrov had warned that the global nuclear threat is intensifying due to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. Speaking to the press, Lavrov emphasized that the situation is becoming more acute with far-reaching consequences for global security. And now, according to reports, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov recently had a telephonic conversation with his Omani counterpart Badr al-Busaidi to discuss the escalating situation around Iran. Both ministers reportedly called for a swift halt to hostilities and a renewed focus on political and diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis. Reports suggest that they expressed their willingness to support a peaceful and diplomatic resolution. And now to a live, we have German Chancellor Friedrich Merz at the White House speaking to US President Donald Trump. Let's cut across.
And so they're gonna be in for a lot of hurt. These are bad people. These are people that killed. I guess it's 35,000. It's coming out 35,000 over the last 3 weeks. Protesters, 35,000 violently killed. So these are bad people. And the leader of the pack is gone. And as you know, 49 people were taken out in the first hit. And I guess there was another hit today on the new leadership. And it looks like that was pretty substantial also. So they're getting hit very hard, and we'll see what happens. A lot of people are coming forward. A lot of the people you would least suspect want to quit. They want to have immunity. They're asking for immunity, and probably at some point they'll be dropping, as you would say, laying down their guns. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, we're just continuing to go forward. Our military is the #1 in the world by far, and we are, everything's big in my book. Venezuela was big, this is big, the original hit, Midnight Hammer, was big, everything you view is big, but it's not considered very big by some standards, by some of our standards. We have a military like no other military that's ever been built.
Yeah, please. Mr. President, what's the worst case scenario that you have planned for in Iran?
Well, I don't know if there's a worst case. We have them very much beaten militarily from the military standpoint. They're still lobbing some missiles. At some point, they won't even be able to do that because we're hitting all of their carriers. We're hitting all of their missile stock. You know, they built up all these missiles over the last few years. They had a lot of them. They've shot a lot of them, and we're knocking out a lot. I guess the worst case would be we do this, and then somebody takes over who's as bad as the previous person, right? That could happen. We don't want that to happen. That would probably be the worst. You go through this, and then in 5 years you realize you put somebody in who was no better. So we'd like to see somebody in there that's going to bring it back for the people. And we'll see what happens with the people. You know, they have their chance. And we've said, don't do it yet. If you're going to go out and protest, don't do it yet. It's very dangerous out there. A lot of bombs are being dropped. But I would say that would be about the worst.
Do you have someone in mind right now? Because you said all the people you did have in mind have been taken out. What do you think?
Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead. So, you know, we had some in mind from that group that is dead. And now we have another group. They may be dead also, based on reports. So I guess you have a third wave coming in. Pretty soon we're not going to know anybody. But we have, I mean, Venezuela was so incredible because we did the attack and we kept government totally intact. And we have Delcy, who's been very good. We have the whole chain of command, and they've been, you know, look, the relationship's been great. We've taken out 100 million barrels of oil already, and a big part of that goes to them, and a big part goes to us. And it's been great. We paid for the war many times over, and we're going to be running the oil. And Venezuela is going to make more money than they ever made, and that's great for the people. The relationship has been great. It's been seamless. Nobody's actually ever seen anything like it. If you look at Iraq, where very stupidly everybody was fired, the generals were fired, the military was fired, the police were fired, the fire departments were fired, and all of the government workers were fired. So after, you know, people would call, they had no idea. And by the way, ISIS was formed. That's where ISIS came from, all of the fired people. We don't believe in that. So we'll see what happens, but first we have to finish off the military.
What do you think about Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi? Is he an option at all in your mind?
I guess he is. Some people like him, and we haven't been thinking about too much about that. It would seem to me that somebody from within maybe would be more appropriate. I've said that. He looks like a very nice person, but it would seem to me that somebody that's there, that's currently popular, if there's such a person. But we have people like that. We have people that were more moderate. You know, these were radical lunatics, and you know what they get? They get nothing. All they do is kill people.
Mr. President, what exactly was the imminent?
You've asked, not your turn. Exactly? Not your turn, please.
Mr. President, you've been to take the heat off the Europeans to present to the help you. Mark Rutte called on the allies to also help you.
What does that mean?
Well, you have to ask Mark Rutte. He said not as part of NATO, but to be helpful to you in this.
Well, some of the European nations have been helpful, and some haven't. And I'm, you know, very surprised. Germany's been great. He's been terrific. Others have been very good, terrific. I think that the head of NATO, Mark, is fantastic. Okay, Mark Rutte. I think he's fantastic. But some of the European, like Spain, has been terrible. In fact, I told Scott to cut off all dealings with Spain. Spain, first of all, It started when every European nation, at my request, paid 5%, which they should be doing. And everybody was enthusiastic about it, Germany, everybody. And Spain didn't do it. And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases, and that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it. Nobody's going to tell us not to use it, but we don't have to. But they were unfriendly. And so I told him, we don't want to, Spain has absolutely nothing that we need other than great people. They have great people, but they don't have great leadership. And as you know, they were the only country that in NATO would not agree to go up to 5%. I don't think they would have agreed to go up to anything. They wanted to keep it at 2%, and they don't pay the 2%. So we're going to cut off all trade with Spain. We don't want anything to do with Spain. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, the lease, okay, he made it, for whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him. And it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
Mr. President, what's your expectations towards Germany? What can Germany do and what should Germany do to help you in this one?
Well, I think they're doing it. I mean, they're letting us land in certain areas, and that's, we appreciate it, and they're just making it comfortable. We're not asking them to put boots on the ground or anything. I mean, we're just, they're a respected country. I have a very good relationship with the country. We have, in particular now, with this leader, with this new leader. I think he's an excellent leader. I had my differences with Angela. I said, you're hurting your country with immigration and you're hurting your country with energy. And we have a man sitting on my right that is, I think, pretty much the opposite of her on energy and the opposite on immigration. And I think he's doing very well.
Mr. President, commercial air travel right now is severely restricted in the Middle East, and thousands of Americans are stranded. Why wasn't there an evacuation plan, and will you send planes to get people out?
Well, because it happened all very quickly. We thought, and I thought maybe more so than most, I could ask Marco, but I thought we were going to have a situation where we were going to be attacked. They were getting ready to attack Israel. They were getting ready to attack others. You're seeing that right now. And a lot of those missiles that are hitting in, those are stationary. Those were aimed there for a long period of time at these other countries. So I think I was right about that. We attacked first. And if we didn't, it could have been, you know, look, we're really decimating them. They're being decimated. And if we didn't, and by the way, we have massive amounts of ammunition. We have the high end. A lot of it was given away stupidly by Biden, very stupidly, for free. And I'm all for Ukraine, but they gave away a lot. As you know, when I give away ammunition, everybody pays for it. The European Union's paying for it. Then they can do what they want with it, but they are giving it, let's say, to Ukraine, and it's okay. But we gave away a lot of high end, but we have plenty. But we have unlimited middle and upper ammunition, which is really what we're using in this war. And we have really an unlimited supply. We also have a lot of the very high end stored in different countries throughout the world. We're literally storing it there, which is actually something that I insisted on in my first term. I rebuilt the military in my first term. The military is great. Unbelievable amount of ammunition, or munitions, as they say, we're given away to. You know, the Wall Street Journal incorrectly covered the story when they said that it was given away to the Middle East. Not to the Middle East, it was given away to Ukraine.
And that's all that we have time for. Please keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.